Ladies and gentlemen, just before we get into this episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast, just a reminder, if you're listening on YouTube, that we're also on Spotify and Anchor now, so you can also listen to it whilst hibernating your phone, if you're on a car journey or if you're on a long walk, you're cleaning around the house or you're using Alexa or something like that. You can listen to us now in the comfort knowing that you're not going to have to keep your phone open. Obviously, YouTube is fantastic and it's where we originated from, so I really encourage you to listen and watch as well the audio and video from the podcast, as obviously there's some hand gestures, some photos and stuff like that, but definitely knowing that you can listen elsewhere as well is really, really important. So please do head down into the link in the description and check us out there on all the episode.
If you really want that, you have got to do it. Like, it does not matter whether you're tired, you don't want to be there, you've got to show up. And I think that is something I've struggled with. Being consistency, because in swimming you have got to be consistent, you've got to do the training to reap the rewards. And I think since moving away from home and it's been all on me, like my parents, when I was back at home, they'd take me to morning training and stuff like that to like help because I had school as well, but now it's all on me. It's like, do you know what, Lauren, I can quite easily just sleep in on a Monday morning because I don't want to go, but in the back of my head I'm like, no, you want to achieve, you want to be the best of the best, you cannot, they're doing it probably 10 times more than you're doing it. That's kind of always in the back of my mind, is like, my main competitors are doing this, if not more, so I need to at least do that and then some to try and get the leg above them.
Ladies and gentlemen, just before we get into this episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast, just a quick word on our sponsor for this episode, which is Rock Supplements. Now, Rock Supplements have been around for a little bit now, and I've been very, very impressed with the stuff that they're doing in Gibraltar, delivering supplements to people who maybe want specific companies. So definitely, if you're maybe looking at the likes of Redcorn or Ghost Supplements, definitely go and check them out in the description box below if you are based in Gibraltar, and use the code FITZ10 for not only 10% off your order, but some support as well for the podcast and to help us grow and get better guests on the podcast. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast, and I promise I'm not being biased, but I've got on fellow Loughborough University student and British swimmer Lauren Cox on the podcast. Lauren, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
No worries. So, very, very brief introduction so we can let Lauren take the reins. She obviously represented Team England last year. Yes, it's 2023, ladies and gents. Jesus. At the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, your home county, I believe, as well, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Yes,
and was very successful in winning 2 bronze medals, which is unbelievable, and we'll get to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But the most important point of the podcast, in my opinion, the icebreaker question, because this sets the tone, Lauren, for the rest of the podcast, so no pressure, but being an elite athlete, you have to obviously watch what you eat, and from a very, very sort of general standpoint, you've got to eat healthy. You know, I'm not going to get into the specifics, okay, because we're not nutritionists. But if you had one death row meal, but then you were still a swimmer until that very last day, what would it be? So bearing in mind, you can go all out. You know, you can go all out. This is your final meal. What would it be?
Okay, it would definitely be like a pub fish and chips.
Oh, that's good. So, like, but we're talking about the full experience here. They're letting you out. You're going to the pub, or can it just be like a general fish and chips?
Yeah. Well, in an ideal world, I'd be let out to the pub, have full fish and chips with mushy peas, obviously.
Oh, I was going to say full works. Okay, it's interesting. I was going to say, well, I'm not sure if they would let you out, but just we'll have to crack on with that. So, Lauren, again, I've given a very brief overview as to your journey there. That's extremely brief, in fact. But do you want to take the reins and just tell everyone a little bit about your journey, and then we can get onto a couple of points surrounding that, a little bit more about life, what life is like as a student athlete, studying at Loughborough, things like that. Over to you.
Yes, well, so I started swimming when I was 3, because my parents, and they have said this multiple times, they wanted to tire me out. So they thought swimming was the best idea because I was an energetic child. And I just kind of loved the water, could never get me out. So I went through all of the learn to swim stages. I then joined a club. My first club was Leamington, where I'm from. And then I started to qualify for nationals. So they were like, let's move you to a bigger club. So I joined City of Coventry, and I was there for about 7 years. And that really like developed my swimming. There I qualified for European Juniors, where I got an individual silver medal, which was the highlight of my career up until last year. And then I moved to Loughborough when 2 years ago now, and became a student athlete, which has been hard to juggle, definitely, but it's been amazing. And without moving to Loughborough, I don't think I could have qualified for the Commonwealth Games, which is where I did really well. And it was a dream come true to go to there. And it was so close to home, so all my family could come, which was really special. And it just made it like, everyone was like, oh, you're only going to Birmingham, like the one before was in Australia. And I was like, yeah, it's not like that exciting, but it's just so close. And it just made it that 10 times more special to be able to do it there.
I was going to say, so for you starting off, because when I was sort of, I'm going to sound like 35 years old. When I was sort of going into undergraduate, I'm at master's level now. So when I was at undergraduate and I was still maybe playing a bit more cricket back home, I was thinking about the best of the best, and Loughborough is, of course, the best of the best, and it is best of the best. That's why I'm here now. Was it for you looking at Loughborough University, or was it about swimming? That's probably my first question. Was it all about coming to do swimming and studies at the same time, or was it about, right, just focus on uni, and then if I can still swim, I can still swim?
Yeah, so it was definitely about the swimming. My coach at Coventry, Adam Rookwood, he took me through a list of options I had. There was Loughborough, Bath, Stirling, staying at Coventry, going, he helped me, supported me a lot with like my decision. And I was like, if I'm going to uni, I'm going to swim. Like, I've got these big goals. It needs to be based around the swimming. And then luckily, Loughborough was just kind of right. Like, it's not too far away from home. The swimming's great. And then also I found like an ideal course. And they also like the whole Loughborough thing is they support you with your studies, which was perfect for me because I mean, swimming is the main focus in my eyes, but I still want a degree, like a good degree. But I didn't want it to go somewhere where they wouldn't understand the sport. Yeah.
So was it then a case of sort of making sure that you still had that right back? Because I think many student athletes I've spoken to, they say that not that they struggle with the balance, but that is something that is a worry that creeps in at the back of their mind, that potentially that they may not have enough time to sort of compete, or they may not have enough time to study. Is that something that maybe potentially has come about at some point, maybe just starting obviously, no, yeah, last year would have been the full year, wouldn't it? I've been at uni just a year after COVID. So what was it for you? Did you have any of those worries when you first came, or?
Yes, definitely juggling it all. Like, swimming is a lot of training hours, and unfortunately sometimes those training hours do clash with lectures. So it's like deciding, do I go swimming? Do I go to a lecture? How am I going to catch up if I don't go to the lecture? Am I going to have time? Like, I spend a lot of time at the pool, and it's kind of like then to have to do so many hours of work after that is just so tiring. So it definitely, I'd say it took me a good couple months to set into a routine when I got here. And, I'd like to think my time management is quite good now since having to learn to juggle it all. But it was definitely it was a big worry thinking of how, but I've managed it okay so far. So hopefully I can just keep doing that.
Keep going. What's a typical day like for you then, sort of maybe on your busiest day? Because I think it wasn't just, I think with me doing this podcast, it's, despite what a lot of people think, I've had a lot of athletes on recently, but it's not just about athletes. I managed to have my brother on as a professional chef and things like that. So it's not just about elite athletes. And I think the reason why I'm doing it is sort of for myself to understand truly what people actually go through. And as a strength or aspiring strength and conditioning coach, I kind of get an idea as to as to sort of the work that people put in, but for you and for all the listeners as well, what is for you a typical like day looking like, maybe from training, studying, just relaxing as well? Because that's another point I was going to get onto a bit later. How do you switch off as well?
Yeah. So I'd say Mondays and Fridays, they are pretty much the same. They're my busiest days. I start with 2 hours in the pool, 6:45 to 8:45, and then straight to the gym for a 9 till 10, half 10, depending on how quick I am and how much talking I do between my sets. And then
it's about 5 minutes of swimming and an hour and 55 minutes of talking. No, I'm joking.
sometimes it is that. And yeah, so then those two, I either have breakfast in between there or breakfast after gym. And then my lectures, it does vary between the weeks, but either I'll go straight to a lecture after that, or I'll have a couple hours back home, then go to my lectures. And then after that's done, I swim 6 till 8 in the evening. And after that is home, dinner, I'll watch some TV. That's normally how I switch off, is I watch whatever series I'm watching, and then I go to bed, hopefully before 12.
It's does it become, or do you look for those routines sometimes to try and help you? Because I always struggle with trying to get this routine or try and get a pattern going, and for me it's always changing. Like, for example, on a Monday finish at 5, and then on a Tuesday finish at 10 in the morning. So it's like I find myself struggling in that sense. But does that almost help you, or do you kind of have to almost, again, like roll with the punches a bit and be like, oh no, right, well, so we're training a bit later, or we're training a bit earlier today, or I'm not feeling too good today, maybe need a bit more rest here and there? What's it for you? Is it routine for you?
It is pretty much routine. I think that's been drilled into me from swimming all the way through. Like, it is very much like routine. Like, before, it was swimming before school, full day of school, swimming again. It was so normal that I think I'm such a routine driven person. However, sometimes I do have to deal with the changes. Like, sometimes on a Monday we'll swim 5 till 7, and it does like mess me up a little bit, because then I'm like, oh, but then I've got to change when I'm eating, and then I've got to change when I have my nap, if I can have a nap. And it's like, so I can kind of adapt, but I like it to be the same every week, so I know what I'm doing, where I'm going. And then I can also plan in more free time. Like, I can say, yes, I'll meet this friend for a coffee, or I'll be able to go see this movie then, because I know. Whereas if it's constantly changing, I can't do that. And then I end up just swimming and working instead of doing life stuff. That makes sense.
Yeah, does those routines almost ever, and again, without being disrespectful, does it ever get you into like a negative sort of headspace when you're going through a tough training block, where you're sort of maybe in a gym session, for example, where you've had a really, really tough sort of session in the morning, and then you're really, really pushing, maybe like for a maximum strength phase, for example? I'll put a little video. By the way, Lauren is incredibly strong. I've seen some lifts on Instagram. This class. So does that ever get you into almost like a negative headspace where you're like, oh, we have to do this again? Or is it about, are those routines almost helping you to avoid those? Because I tend to find that if I do have, again, I'm going to be honest, like, yes, routines do help me maybe a little bit, but maybe having such a structured day like yourself, does it harm you sometimes?
Yes, definitely. I'd say winter training, so October through to like February, is my worst time of year. My coach will agree. My parents agree that it's awful. And the routine helps because, again, I can plan fun things to do. But it's kind of like, oh, I've got to do this again, or oh, I've got to do that. And when it's cold and dark and it's not fun, it cannot be fun in these months. And I think, like, I'm starting to like come out of it now, but start of January, like, I am not the best person to be around, because it's just so, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and it's just like everything, it's just like, oh, I've got swimming again, or my days are all the same. So it definitely like hinders me a bit, but then you do get through it. I mean, it's from now to the start of January, it's been 4 weeks, a month, and I'm starting to like get better, see the rewards. Training's getting slightly better to stuff I more enjoy. But no, I definitely have dips and peaks.
Yeah. How do you? I think that's the life of a professional athlete, especially something like swimming, where there is really well, maybe apart from at the moment, but there's no really off season, if you like, especially with stuff like the ISL going on as well, the International Swimming League going on as well, sort of in between, which obviously helps athletes a hell of a lot. I think it's a statistic that, you know, people are able to almost become full-time swimmers now, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So is it almost tough to, again, you mentioned not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but is it because it's almost you're training like for a certain period of time? Because I thought maybe someone like Adam Peaty, who I know probably trains in similar timings to you, is always competing probably throughout the course of a year. But what is it like for you? Because how do you keep going through those winter months? Because like I said, with something like swimming, it's always ongoing and there's always a competition to get to.
Yeah, I think it's having those goals. Like, I've got my goals. I know what I want to achieve this year. I know what I want to achieve in 3 more years. I think they have like such a strong power, and it's like, you know what, if you really want that, you have got to do it. Like, it does not matter whether you're tired, you don't want to be there, you've got to show up. And I think that is something I've struggled with, being consistency, because in swimming you have got to be consistent, you've got to do the training to reap the rewards. And I think since moving away from home, and it's been all on me, like my parents, when I was back at home, they'd take me to morning training and stuff like that to like help, because I had school as well. But now it's all on me. It's like, do you know what, Lauren, I can quite easily just sleep in on a Monday morning because I don't want to go. But in the back of my head, I'm like, no, you want to achieve, you want to be the best of the best. You cannot, they're doing it probably 10 times more than you're doing it. That's kind of always in the back of my mind, is like, my main competitors are doing this, if not more. So I need to at least do that and then some to try and get the leg above them. So I think it's definitely like my goals get me through it, but there is still some days I turn up to training and I'm like, I do not want to be here. But then, I mean, I do love it. So at the end of the session, I'm happy.
Don't talk to me today, guys. No, just not today. Just not today.
Most people know when to not talk to me. I come in the mornings looking very grumpy, and they're just
stand clear. No, it's brilliant. How do you deal with those goals and those motivations, like sort of simultaneously? Because when I was a bit of a younger, I'm not going to say athlete anymore, when I was younger and I was playing cricket, it was always about comparing myself to others, and it was always about, what is this cricketer doing that I'm not? What am I doing that he's not? Why am I not getting selected and he is? Do you almost use that, or do you have to stop yourself from thinking like that? Because again, I think it's so individual, and I think you have to be so mentally strong to be able to sort of compare maybe not compare someone, but look at an athlete, see what they're doing, and not compare them to yourself. Because if someone's genuinely sort of maybe quicker than you at the moment, or someone's a better player than you are, that almost gets me into a bit of a negative headspace when I do it. So what's your attitude towards that, and then focusing on yourself if you distract yourself from that?
So I definitely, sometimes I can spiral into like, oh, I didn't get picked for this team, this person did, I'm faster than them, or whatever, or maybe they're faster than me, but I'm so close, so it's like I should be on that team too. I think I can spiral in the initial like finding out of it, but then I just use it as just like, well, I'm going to prove to them that they made the wrong mistake, and I am good enough to be on that team. So then it's kind of just like and also with things like that, you've got to where you are. Like, I've got to where I am now without having that team or that support. So why can't I go further? You know, so it's like, I've done it all by myself before, I can continue to do that.
Was there a moment or a specific scenario where you actually did, like sort of said, prove them wrong, and sort of maybe sort of they came to you and said they made the wrong decision? Because that moment sticks out to me massively, and I think I've spoken about it previously, where So if I didn't get selected to go to these World Cup qualifiers that we did for Gibraltar, and I kind of I was a bit maybe pissed off for a couple of days, I'll be brutally honest with you, and we're human at the end of the day. You're going to be upset maybe for a few hours or so. But then I was just like, you know what, stop this. I'm just going to get my head down. There was 2 weeks until sort of the team left, and I actually ended up going on that trip because, well, at the expense of someone getting injured. But I think it was almost like a blessing in that sense, because I was approached afterwards and said, we actually should have picked you in the first place. We're sorry. And then was there ever a moment for you? Because like I said, that moment sticks out to me. So is there any which stick out maybe to you?
Kind of. I guess when I got selected for European Juniors, I don't think anyone really expected me to. I don't think I was on anyone's radar except for my coach. My coach said that he 110% believed in me, and he was like, you can do it. I think you can do it. So I was like, okay, let's try do it. And I think that then getting selected, I think they were like, oh, she's here. She's on the scene. She wasn't really before. But I'm hoping in the future, I do have a very standout moment. There are some scenarios which I feel like I should be picked for some stuff, but hopefully in the future. But I'd say that's the most distinct one so far, for sure.
Well, I think going to the Commonwealth Games in your first year or so, in your first comp, and then winning 2 medals, I think is pretty standout, my opinion.
Yes.
But yeah, again, maybe going on to the gold stuff specifically, because just before we move on, I think that's a massive one for me, and I'll be the first to say that I'm still struggling with that now, is planning ahead too far, which is where I almost get a bit lost, and it's almost like a rabbit caught in headlights. I'm like, God, I don't even know what I'm doing next week, let alone 3 months' time. And it upsets the hell out of my family and my friends because they can't plan for anything. And I always say this, and I've said this countless times, I'm always a week at a time. Yes, I'll have my long-term goals, and I'm doing that next month. I'm going away and playing next month in Spain. The month after, I'm going to Portugal. And the month after that, there's a home series in Gibraltar, which is brilliant. But it's always a week at a time for me. And yeah, it upsets people, but I think it keeps me in a really good headspace where I'm focusing on this right now, whereas I'm focusing on this now, but I'm actually got a little bit of my thoughts towards next week as well. And I also lose attention to what I'm doing now. And I'm always a big fan of working at 110%. And I always say that about myself. And I almost feel like I'm working at 75% if I'm thinking about what's happening in 2 weeks' time. Is that something that, yeah, like you said, you have your long-term goals, but especially for you, training so much, focusing on yourself, sleep, nutrition, performance every single day, is it something that you need to think about a little bit closer to that maybe than a month at a time?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is. I definitely do. It comes a week at a time. We get our weekly schedule sent to us on a Saturday or a Sunday, and that helps, because then it's okay, that week's gone, focus on the next week, and I can plan when I get that weekly schedule. I think the main thing with swimming is I know when my big competitions are, it's Worlds this year, it's Olympics next year now, 2 years after that is Commonwealth Games. So I kind of plan, because I'm I know I want to go to the next Commonwealth Games, so I know I'm still going to be here in, I think it's 3 or 4 years now. So that's kind of my long-term goal is I want to go to the next Commonwealth Games. So that's 3-4 years. So I've got 3-4 years left in the sport, maybe more than that afterwards. But and then I kind of have my yearly goals, which is the main competition of that year. It's do I want to qualify for that? What other backup competitions are there that I could also qualify for? What times do I want to go? And then there's my weekly goals, which are around so I have a lot of goals going on, but I don't think about
Where'd you write these all down?
I do. I have them written down somewhere. I don't think about the 1 in 3 to 4 years, because that could change. I'm open for it to change, but in the back of my head, I'm kind of secure in knowing I'm going to still be swimming then. That's what I want to do. Whereas, and then I kind of then just break it down to monthly, weekly, yearly, you know, stuff like that to kind of like just keep me focused and not so that my mind isn't wandering, because I do like there's stuff I need to fix now in my stroke, in my race, that I need to focus on instead of these competitions I want to go to, because I'm not going to go to those competitions if I don't fix the stuff I need to fix.
What stops you then from thinking too far ahead? Like, what is your strategy to, again, like maybe when you're focusing on the wrong thing or you are focusing too far ahead, what's your strategy? Is it just like, Lauren, like cut it out? Or is it, do you have to do something? Is it, because a lot of people think about going to a walk or using the gym to sort of almost stop thinking about that. What is your sort of strategy towards that? Because I think it's really effective for some people who, again, maybe are almost trying to shoot too far for the moment, not focusing on the present.
I think definitely reminding myself to stay like in the moment, because I mean, what point is there worrying about something that's going to happen in 3-4 years?
Or that's gone already. Gone already. Sorry to interrupt you, because that's one thing as well, is focusing on what's happened when you can't really control it, no?
Yeah, no, I definitely think, I mean, after every competition, I review it, draw a line under it, move on. It's like, whether it was good, whether it was bad, that's it. There's still stuff to learn from each scenario. And I think going back to like the processes, I think for instead of thinking of like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I think more thinking about, well, how are you going to do that? You know, I need to work on my turns. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, right, let's work on the turns. And I'll try and like switch my brain off to thinking like all of the outcomes and just think about my skills to try and stop me from spiraling and thinking, oh, I want to do this and I want to go here and I'm going to qualify for that team, because you're not going to unless you work on your weaknesses. So I think definitely that. And I'm quite lucky in like the facilities in Loughborough are amazing, and we have like time to go on a camera to work on our skills. So I think in that sense, I know there's one session a week I am going to be solely working on my turns or my underwaters or my stroke. And I think that definitely helps to ground me, because I'll think I'm swimming amazing. I'll get on that camera and they'll be like, that's wrong. So it kind of like helps bring me back down to think about stuff.
So do you treat maybe like when you won bronze, to maybe when you maybe even sort of came fourth, because you did an individual event as well, if I'm not mistaken, and you may have got one of your fastest times. It's weird because I think it's so not individualized. Sorry, it's so characterized by gold, silver, and bronze. Whereas a hell of a lot of time, people are still smashing goals left, right, and centre in races that they don't win gold, silver, and bronze. So I'm going to reference one guy who was just thought about. James Wilby, who is obviously a breaststroker, extremely quick breaststroker. And James, if you're listening, mate, I've sent you a message. Get in touch, mate. So no, I'm joking. Well, I have, so yeah, do it. No, but I quite admire him, because obviously being in front of him or training in the same era as the best breaststroker to ever live, which is probably Adam Peaty, he's still like almost getting really close to the records that Adam has broken, and he's winning silver, or he won gold in the Commonwealth Games, but it must be really tough for him, and that's why I asked you, do you almost keep them do you almost keep winning a medal and maybe but breaking a PB at the same race maybe, but you didn't win a medal? Is it the same? Do you characterize it as the same race? I've said a lot there, but
I think that's like when I came fourth in my 50, that was like, it was such a good swim. And I mean, I did it all correct. Like all my processes were correct. My dive was good. My underwater was good. And I came fourth. I looked up and I saw like a good time, but I came fourth by like 0.1 or 0.2 of a second. And I was like, oh, that's so like heartbreaking. And that's what most people said to me. They were like, oh, you came fourth, like you were so close. And the fact it was so close is just even more annoying.
I was going to say.
But it's like, so I think like when you swim and you go to a race and you're like in a final, you want one of those 3 medals, if not the gold one. And I think it is good to remember, like I had such a good 50 race in my time, like that's a great time for me. I think I'd like accepted that, but at the same time, it left me wanting more. Like I wanted a medal. So it's kind of like, okay, didn't get that. What can we do to get that? Like next time, you getting a medal. And my coach was like that as well. He was like, it was a great swim, but you didn't get a medal. So it's like, what can you do to get that medal?
Ouch. Sorry, coach.
Yeah, and then he made me watch the medal ceremony for it. Let me stand there and watch.
I absolutely love that. I love that. Because obviously I understand exactly why he's done it, hasn't it? It's just a case of trying to be like, look, Lauren, like, you're going to be there like next time. Like, you're going to be stood on that podium next time.
He was like, next time we come here, you're going to be on top of that podium.
That's
and I was
awesome.
like, to be fair, it was good. And it's definitely added to my motivation. But at the time, I was like, oh, I don't want to be watching this.
You must not love me. What's going on? Is the term... Because then obviously you were lucky enough to then stand on the podium twice. Is the term, and this is a bit of a bizarre question, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it was kind of one which I thought would generate some really good points from you. Is the term winning bronze a bizarre one for you? Because a lot of people will maybe think about a bronze or a silver, like you just did before then, saying like, oh, you really want that gold medal. Is it a case of winning bronze almost a bit bizarre to you?
Kind of. I think because it was my first ever international medal on that stage, I was over the moon. I mean, I was so happy with it. I mean, I went there, wasn't really expecting to get a medal. I think, but now, since I've had that, I'm like, yeah, I want the ones above it now.
Yeah.
You know,
I wasn't trying to be disrespectful there, but ladies and gentlemen, by any chance. Sorry.
It's a great achievement, and I am so grateful to have come third. And it is like, I definitely think it is a weird feeling, because then you're like, oh, but I think it's just such like a athlete mindset. You want to win, and like anything else. Like I know my coach at Coventry, he was always like, no one ever remembers second or third, but they remember the person who won. And I think that as athletes, we all know in any sport. And I think if you don't, you're always like a little bit like, oh, I didn't. But it's still like an amazing achievement, which we have to remind ourselves, because you can get caught. Of course.
110%, because that's why I've obviously had you on, is because that success that you've had almost drives the athlete that you are a little bit more. And that's why sort of I wonder when we have Lauren on again in a few years' time, once she's won gold, it would be interesting to then discuss how that mindset has changed, because then how do you stay at the top, which is obviously why I admire like sort of Adam and James so much, is because both James Wilby and James Guy, because they're winning golds and they're still at the top of their game, and they still, I see them in the gym and they're still continuing to train all the time. So what keeps you driving then, in terms of maybe specific competitions like you mentioned, or you alluded to a bit earlier, where you said, right, cool, Olympics is next year, Commonwealth Games is 2 years after that. Do you have to stop yourself thinking about Olympics sometimes, or is it? Yeah, I can imagine it always creeps in somehow, and it's always there. It's always like, oh man, what happens if what is your mindset towards the Olympics?
I think I don't like to mention it too much. It's my absolute dream and goal to go to the Olympics. I know it's a long shot, definitely, because they don't take everyone.
No.
And we've got some really good backstrokers in Britain, like really good. So it's tough competition. I think I try not to think about it too much. It's nice to have that reminder, definitely on like the dark days. My coach always goes, Lauren, you know why you're doing this. You want to go to the Olympics, you've got to do this, And I think knowing he believes and supports me in that is always good. And there's different ways of saying it. Like I know my coach at Coventry and Ian at Loughborough, they always say like, oh, you're booking your ticket on the plane. And I know what that means without them saying Olympics. They're like, you're getting that ticket onto the plane. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I can do another round. If that makes sense.
Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for interrupting this episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast, but just a quick reminder on our sponsor for today's episode, Rock Supplements. Now, Rock Supplements have been around for a little bit now, and I've been very, very impressed with the stuff that they're doing in Gibraltar, delivering supplements to people who maybe want specific companies. So definitely, if you're maybe looking at the likes of Redcorn or Ghost Supplements, definitely go and check them out in the description box below if you are based in Gibraltar, and use the code FITZ10 for not only 10% off your order, but some support as well for the podcast and to help us grow and get better guests on the podcast. Let's go. For you then, how do you describe and again, I didn't want it to become an interview too much, but at this point, again, it's just come to my mind now where it's about has there ever been a point where maybe you didn't want to swim anymore? Because I think it's not always like we mentioned before, it's not going to be rosy and dandy and green and dark, nice blue skies every single day, or 8 degrees like it is now for some random reason. What is your has there ever been a point like that where you've maybe not wanted to swim anymore?
Yes, that has happened a couple of times actually. It's I do fall out of love with it occasionally, like doing it day in, day out. Sometimes you don't always see the rewards, and you've got other factors, you've got other stresses. Normally, it's other stresses weighing down on me, and then swimming starts to crumble under that, and then I start spiraling, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do it anymore. I hate getting up in the morning, I hate coming back and it's dark. I think, so yeah, it is happened, and I think sometimes when that does happen, how I've got out of it is taking some time away. So I know it happened. I just have to take either a long weekend, get out of Loughborough, or when I was at Coventry, we went away for the weekend. And I think just doing some things that I enjoy. So I don't know, I would go home for the weekend, go out for coffee with my friends, see my home friends, go out for dinner with my parents, just seeing them, even if we just watch a movie. It's kind of like, and then I start to miss swimming and I'm like, yeah, I want to go back. Whereas if I didn't miss it, I don't think I would have gone back, because I had fallen out of love with it completely. But each time it has happened, I've been like, I'm ready to get back in the water now. And it's benefited me by having that time away. I think part of being like a good athlete is knowing when your body needs time to just stop, and you need to just, because you're only going to get yourself further into a hole if you continue doing it.
Do you reckon that was burnout?
I think it could have been. I think both times school and uni stress has been at like an all-time high. So I think I was just getting really overwhelmed, and it was like I'd be struggle sleeping, struggle keeping like eating enough. And I think that doesn't help. And then your body's tired. So yeah, definitely like a bit of burnout. And yeah, it just needed a break from everything to get back. Do you
almost characterize yourself as Lauren the swimmer and Lauren the student, and then you switch between the two whenever, sort of on a daily basis? Yeah. I'm Lauren the swimmer most of the time, and before my like course friends knew I was a swimmer, I was just Lauren, which was really nice, because I'm always just like, oh, it's Lauren the swimmer, she swims, and I'm like, oh yeah, but I'm also like a person. But yeah, no, I do have to switch. I don't just put the goggles on all the time, ladies and gents. Sorry, like I am a normal person underneath.
yeah, and then but definitely I have to switch. There's just like times you need to be. Like at swimming, I'm quite chill, relax. I find studying quite hard. I have to work quite hard to get good grades. Academics don't come naturally to me, so I definitely have to be a little bit more serious than I am when I'm swimming.
Awesome. So again, I don't want to make these podcast interviews, but I love the fact that I created almost like a questions from the public section, because if there's anyone that wants to be the next Lauren Cox and standing on them podiums at those big competitions, they might have some questions for you, which maybe if they commented on the posts afterwards, it might not get answered, which is one of my biggest fears with this. So got 2 really good ones here. We had a lot of questions actually for this one. The most, I was telling Lauren before we started recording that this was the most amount of questions I've been asked, which is awesome. So definitely keep them coming in future episodes. So what helps you when you feel like you've got no motivation? We kind of almost spoke about it, but maybe some specific tactics that you've got for this person that's asked.
I think definitely, as I said before, remind yourself of your goals. I think keeping them, somewhere you can see them. So you're like, yeah, that's why I want to go to swimming, because I really want that. And I think also sometimes I'm kind of in 2 minds with motivation. I think, yes, you can have it and it's really good, But also I think to achieve those goals, you can't just rely on being motivated to go to every session. Because if I say I'm motivated to go to every session, I'm not. I'm lying. Sometimes I don't want to be there, but sometimes there is no other option than to not be there. Like, you might not be, I think motivation is like great as a concept and people can be really motivated. But then when it goes, they're like, oh, I've got no motivation. I'm like, okay, but you can still go, you know? So I think definitely, but the goals, you know, just remind yourself of your goals. If you do like to be motivated, your goals need to be like achievable, but also high enough that you can feel like they drive your want to be there.
Awesome. That's a brilliant answer. So the second one here, which is from a sports science background, it might be a bit sort of, I might know the answer to this maybe, but specifically to you, what injuries have you dealt with and how have you dealt with them?
Oh, well, I've been very lucky that I have not got injured too
Touch wood.
much.
Stay the same?
Yeah, touch wood. I'm quite lucky with swimming being relatively low impact, so it's very lucky. But one thing I have had was when I was younger. I was quite young actually. I was like 12 or 13. I have like wonky knees, so my like feet turn in, and that caused a lot of growing pains. So it hurt to turn, it hurt to walk. So I had an operation. I had 2 operations on my knees. And then I guess the recovery and the rehab coming back from that is probably what's most distinct. And I mean, lots of physio. I had a great physio who got me through it, just to like build up strength around my other muscles. And also because my feet turn in, when I stand, if anyone ever sees me standing, you'll see I stand with my knees in. That can be not very good, and I don't engage my glutes specifically, so I do a lot of glute work to engage them because that's key on my start and my underwaters. And the kind of outcome of that is on my underwaters, my legs are apart instead of people's being close together because my knees are in and then my feet go out like that. It's really weird. We're trying to fix it. But so that's kind of like my like main injury is just the way my like legs are formed. They just roll in. But I mean, the way I've got through it is literally just physio. Also, I like to think that like everyone's different. So if I was to have like my straight legs, I'd be really weak in that position, whereas I'm quite strong with them turned in. So it's not necessarily a disadvantage. I mean, it is and it isn't. We're kind of like working through that with like the coaches. But I'd say, yeah, with injuries, physio is like your first. If you've got a good physio, you'll be sorted. And it's, you know, change your goals, make them more achievable. Be like, do you know what? I want to be back in the gym in 4 weeks, if that's relative to your injury. You know, I think, you know, the main thing of this podcast is me talking about goals, but I do think they're so important.
No, definitely. You almost don't have anywhere to strive towards if you don't have any goals in a bit of a bizarre way, aren't you?
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. That was really good. So coming on to the finishing notes now, which is my favourite section, definitely. I know it said it was the icebreaker question, but it's the whole podcast is my favourite section. But has there been one or a number of individuals who have influenced you in your journey thus far?
Yes. The main ones will be my parents. Their support is amazing. I would not be able to swim without their support. I'm funded by them essentially, so their support, I wouldn't be able to do it without them. And my coaches, so my one when I was younger, Adam Rookwood, he shaped me into the person I am today, I like to think. And he, you know, I wouldn't still be swimming. I would have quit when I was younger if I didn't have him as a coach. And then moving on, he, you know, helped me move to Loughborough, and then finding Ian's definitely helped in numerous ways. He is so influential in my thing. His like belief in me and everything keeps me going. Like, it does get hard up here when, like, because I've not got my family around. Like, I'm a big family person. I've not got my family around up here. It's it can get really tough, and he like always reminds me that, you know, he is there all the time. So he's definitely a huge person in, like, you know, in my support team. And so I definitely say those those 4 people are like key. There's been so many people like influencing me. Definitely, I just think I don't necessarily, I have role models, like people I aspire to be like. The backstrokers at the minute, like Kylie Mass, Louise, who I swim with, she's kind of a fly swimmer, but also does a bit of backstroke. The ones in Britain, I hold them so high up, and like they are my role models within my sport. But I think like my support team, the physios I've had, my parents, my coaches I've had, they are like who influence me, and they are like, I do it for them. You know, I do it for myself, but I also do it for them because I want to make them proud.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
I love the fact that, like you mentioned, role models there, because even if you're at the top of your game, I think it's awesome to have role models, because it's almost you kind of stop comparing you to you, and I think everyone says, "Oh, focus on yourself," and we did speak about that a little bit, but I think it's not to compare yourself to, but almost to remind yourself where you can get to, because yes, talent is really important, but a lot of these people, have built themselves up by hours in the gym or hours in the pool, and it's almost awesome to have that sort of mindset on things, which is brilliant, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to take that away. So finishing off the podcast today, what is one piece of advice you would give to anyone who wants to be the next Lauren Cox, or anyone who wants to compete or succeed at major championships, or anyone who wants to start swimming, anyone who's maybe a swimmer already and wants to maybe get up to that elite level that you are, Lauren? Over to you.
I think definitely focus on yourself, be consistent with your training, and give your best every session. Don't I'm not the best at training. If you see me in the pool, I'm normally at the back, but I'm trying my best to my level. So I think definitely focus on yourself. Don't compare yourself to someone who isn't you, but also have goals that other people are good at. Someone might be better at turns than you, then find out why, find out what they do, and then work on that. But don't be oh, I'm rubbish, they're so good. That's not the right mindset to be in. So definitely be consistent, have really good goals, and just enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, there's no point doing it.
That's awesome, Lauren. Well, what a way to finish this episode, ladies and gents. 45 minutes almost flown by, and I'm wondering where it's going. It's awesome to have you on, Lauren. Being at the same university as myself, it almost really inspires me to see you succeeding at the top level. So thank you so much for your time, and during obviously a very busy day for you. Like you mentioned, Monday and Friday are very busy, and it's a Monday now, ladies and gents. So make sure you're getting in them comments and showing Lauren some support in the description below. So thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
No worries at all, ladies and gents, and we will see you in the next episode. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, what an unbelievable episode that was to film with Lauren Cox. She is by far, probably at the moment, one of the most interesting episodes we've done so far, just purely out of the fact that, she's trying to almost juggle uni and swim. Not she's trying to, she is balancing and juggling uni and swimming at the same time, but swimming at the highest level. That's one thing which we don't think about, where I'm hopefully going to get someone who's maybe starting their own business soon on the podcast, and finding what makes them tick and things like that. So it's unbelievable to start with that with Lauren, and discuss what really makes her tick in a day-to-day life, which is incredibly difficult. She's training 3 times a day. She is going to uni maybe 3 or 4 times a day, and she needs to make time for herself, and how she balances that is what truly makes this podcast so special to me, in finding out how people tick. We were trying our best to try and bring on a very broad, diverse of people, and that's something that we will continue to do for as long as possible. As soon as this podcast starts to have a theme, is as soon as I start to stop enjoying it, because I'm looking at who I'm going to try and get on in the next few weeks, and it's such a broad variety, and it excites me so much in the fact that we are going to discuss coaches, maybe other athletes, people who have started their own businesses, people who are doctors, doctors, people who are trainers. So it's awesome to see that broad, diverse variety. Like I mentioned in the podcast, we've had Nico on before, who, obviously I love so much, my brother. And that was unbelievable because it almost gave people a different view on what this podcast is going to be about and what it is about. And Lauren coming on today definitely helps that, because she's not just someone who has won a medal at the Commonwealth Games. It's someone who is trying to succeed at many different things and become the biggest sort of person that she can be, and have, I always talk about the Swiss Army knife analogy and having as many tools as you can, and she's definitely trying to do that. So many sort of congrats to her so far, and my admiration towards her will continue to grow as she succeeds as a swimmer. So thanks very much, Lauren, if you are still watching, or if you have watched. And thank you guys as well. We've had some unbelievable amount of support in the last 2 episodes on Sunny's podcast and on Ellie's podcast. And I just... please just keep it going, sharing, liking, sharing the podcast on Spotify. I don't know if you're listening on Spotify, you can almost share it to your Instagram stories. Please do that and tag us, and we'll reshare it. We'll say thank you to the hills and back, and keep sharing the podcast in group chats if you got it, if it helped you. We've had a lot of support on this episode from people asking questions in the question section, so please do ask a question if you've got one, even if you're not a swimmer. Ask what injuries they've had. What that's probably didn't come from, I don't know if that came from a swimmer or not, but it might not have done. So just keep sort of getting excited at the Fitzness Academy podcast, and hopefully some big things coming soon, ladies and gents. We're working really, really hard to try and make this podcast the best that it can. One thing I love about this game is that you can learn off others, and it's not almost like it's not competition, because listening to a podcast can be, 2 or 3 times a week. Some people don't release podcasts 2 or 3 times a week, so it allows people to help each other and to combine and to really help each other grow and become the best version of each other, and help people learn about people that they might not know about. Not everyone will know the people that I have on the podcast, which is the beauty of trying to find these guests. So please stay tuned and look forward to the next episode of the Fitzness Academy podcast coming very soon, guys. Take care.